Finally, in your interaction with the fewer and fewer survivors of that day, what perspective have you gained from their seared-in memories that has given you an immediacy to what actually happened and improves your sense as a curator of easily one of the most monumental events in American history?
I've been incredibly fortunate in my 24 years here. I started working on the Oral History Project, and even though my title has changed 4 or 5 times, the Oral History Project has still been the backbone of what I do here. And so I've had the enormous privilege and honor to interview over 2,000 people about this event.
Amazing.
And it's like, obviously, Walter Cronkite, Peter Jennings, Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather, those people are of incredible significance. The eyewitnesses, Clint Hill, Secret Service agents, the police officers, the FBI agents, all of those recollections are so significant. The Parkland Hospital doctors. But shifting from that, I often find the most poignancy for me personally comes from the people who maybe weren't even in Dallas at that time, but have these links that are indirect, or simply were inspired by Kennedy to create, to write poetry or music or a novel or sculpture or artwork, some way in which the assassination moved them so that they were needing to find an artistic outlet for their grief. That grief of a nation is something that has long fascinated me, but I have gained such a nuanced perspective of in talking to those people who live through the experience, maybe detached from covering it as a breaking news story like a journalist would, or as an investigation like a police officer would. I mean, I've learned a few fundamental things. I've learned that the vast majority of law enforcement officials who were involved in the day-to-day activities of this case, almost to a person, remained convinced until the end of their lives that Oswald acted alone, that they were not invested in the possibility of a conspiracy. That's not to say there wasn't one, but I have gained that perspective that the actual law enforcement guys, and that goes for the FBI, Secret Service, and Dallas Police, the people involved in the investigations, most of them, and the majority of the reporters who were covering it starting that weekend. Hugh Ainsworth, Darwin Payne, the people that were on the ground interviewing Abraham Zapruder. Darwin Payne interviewed Zapruder a few minutes after the assassination. Ainsworth was out here in the plaza, then was there for the arrest of Oswald, then was in the basement when Oswald was shot. So again, the law enforcement, the news media, most of the guys who were involved from that day don't believe in a conspiracy, which is very interesting. But you know, people ask me all the time, "What's your favorite interview?" And it's hard to say because it's like, I don't know, the people that tend to move me the most are the ones who maybe weren't particularly involved. A woman named Vivian Castleberry. She was the women's news editor at the Times Herald. She was over at the Trademark Luncheon, so she wasn't uninvolved. But the poignancy of Vivian's story is not about anything she did as a reporter that day. It's about her as a mom. She talks about being at the Times Herald until late, the early hours of Saturday, November 23rd, finally getting to come home and reuniting with her daughter, who she had dropped off early that morning on her way to work on a downtown street so that her daughter could see the presidential parade. She has not had any communication with her daughter from the moment she dropped her off prior to the parade until she gets home that night, when, for many people, years had elapsed. And Vivian talks about going upstairs to see Carol, her daughter, and she says that her daughter, the moment she opened her bedroom door, Carol just shot up in bed, tears streaming down her face. And Vivian goes to her, and Carol says, "Mother, his hair was red in the sunlight." And Vivian, who had been a journalist, who had written these stories about the mood in Dallas the night of the assassination, who had been at the Trademark to write about Jackie Kennedy and what she was wearing and what she experienced on her visit, Vivian instantly stopped being a journalist and let it all in, and she became a mother, comforting her child who had seen the president 10 minutes before the assassination. And that kind of impact, I think, speaks tremendous volumes. And it's the reason why I think the Oral History Project is really our single most significant collection at the museum, gathering those voices, because that's invaluable insight and emotion that really kind of guides us through that period and takes us all the way up to the present day as we see how people have responded to this event.